2:10 p.m., December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers take off into a perfectly clear Florida sky. It's a routine training mission. Everything is normal, until a sudden, chilling transmission breaks the radio silence. The compasses are dead. The seasoned pilots are completely disoriented. And then, they just vanish. Welcome to Hidden Reality. Today, in this documentary explainer, we're unraveling the darkest secrets of the ocean's most infamous stretch of water.
We don't know which way is west. That was the terrifying transmission from the squadron leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. His primary compass had suddenly failed. He pulled out the backup, but that was dead too. As the weather turned violent and the sun dropped below the horizon, utterly confused radio chatter echoed back and forth in the dark. Some pilots thought they needed to fly west. Taylor thought they were over the Gulf of Mexico and needed to turn east. By 7:04 p.m., the final transmission crackled through the static, and all 5 heavily armed aircraft were swallowed by the ocean, never to be seen again.
The sudden, shocking loss of life that day was staggering. 27 people gone in an instant. That includes the 14 crew members on Flight 19, plus 13 more on a massive Mariner search and rescue plane that immediately flew out to find them. That rescue plane disappeared just as completely as the bombers. The military launched one of the largest air and sea search operations in human history for days. The result? Nothing. Not a single body, not one piece of debris. Everything simply evaporated.
Section 1. Birth of a Legend. Centuries of Strange Disappearances. Flight 19 was just one tragic piece of a 500,000 square mile puzzle. The eerie reputation of these waters stretches back over 5 centuries. In 1492, Christopher Columbus reported his compasses spinning wildly out here, even writing in his logs about a bizarre, massive ball of fire crashing from the sky into the sea. Over the ensuing eras, these treacherous waters earned chilling titles from sailors, like the Sea of Doom and the Graveyard of the Atlantic. The sheer scale of the horror only escalated. In March of 1918, the USS Cyclops, one of the absolute biggest, most vital ships in the U.S. Navy during World War I, simply ceased to exist. It was carrying 11,000 tons of cargo and 306 people on a routine 9-day journey. The weather was clear. Their final message simply read, "Weather fair, all well." A colossal steel behemoth, literally vanishing without a trace, terrified the public and cemented the area's deadly reputation.
If you want a story straight out of a cinematic horror film, look at the 1881 encounter of the Ellen Austin. Sailing from London to New York, her crew spots a drifting ship. It's completely empty. The cargo is perfectly intact, but there isn't a single human soul aboard. The captain sends a prize crew over to sail the ghost ship alongside them. Suddenly, a violent squall separates the 2 vessels. When the storm finally breaks and they spot the mystery ship again, the boarding crew has vanished entirely. Legend says the owner of the Ellen Austin was so profoundly disturbed he immediately sold his ship.
Despite centuries of these dark maritime whispers, it wasn't until 1964 that the phenomenon exploded. A writer named Vincent H. Gaddis dropped a bombshell article in Argosy magazine titled The Deadly Bermuda Triangle. He connected decades of these isolated tragedies, weaving them together into one massive, cohesive mystery. That single article was the spark that ignited the books, the movies, and the intense global obsession we still have today.
Section 2. The Scientific Explanations. Dismantling the Myth.
So what is actually hunting ships in the dark? For decades, people have blamed everything from alien abductions to giant sea monsters and dimensional rifts. But let's strip away the supernatural and pivot to the hard, unforgiving science. We have 4 scientifically grounded explanations that reveal the true, lethal nature of this region.
Let's immediately solve the compass failures that terrified Columbus and doomed Flight 19. It all comes down to agonic lines. Normally, your compass points to magnetic north, which is slightly off from geographic true north. Navigators constantly calculate the difference. But on an agonic line, true north and magnetic north align perfectly. For the last 2 to 3 centuries, the 0-degree agonic line has been hovering right through the Bermuda Triangle, throwing unsuspecting navigators into total, deadly confusion. Next, let's look at the geography itself. Those stunning, crystal-clear turquoise waters around the Bahamas? They're beautiful, but they're a death trap. That bright color means the water is deceptively shallow. Beneath the surface, like treacherous shoals. Underwater cliffs and reefs that unexpectedly rise up, ripping the hulls right out of heavy, deep-draft ships, leaving them hopelessly stranded to be battered to pieces. Combine those hidden reefs with some of the most violent weather on the planet. This entire geographical triangle acts as a colossal funnel for extreme storms. Globally, China sees the most hurricanes, followed by the USA and Cuba. Well, Cuba sits right in the triangle, and Florida, which takes more hurricane hits than any other U.S. state, is its western point. Ships out here aren't fighting monsters, they're fighting catastrophic waterspouts and sudden hurricane-force winds that can snap a vessel in half.
But this fourth explanation is where the science gets truly mind-bending: methane hydrates. Lab experiments in Australia have proven this phenomenon is real. You know how the extreme salt in the Dead Sea makes you float? Erupting underwater mud volcanoes do the exact reverse. They flood the water column with millions of tiny methane bubbles, completely destroying the water's density. If a ship sails directly over one of these blowouts, it loses all buoyancy and drops like a stone. It sinks instantly. No distress call, no wreckage, just gone.
And to quickly clear up that 500-year-old Columbus mystery we mentioned earlier, modern scientists are in widespread agreement that the spectacular ball of fire he saw crashing into the ocean in 1492 wasn't a UFO. It was simply a meteor entering the atmosphere and striking the sea. A jaw-dropping sight for a 15th century sailor, absolutely, but an entirely natural one.
Section 3. The Psychology of Mystery. Tricks of the Human Mind.
Here's the real twist. The most dangerous element in the Bermuda Triangle isn't the methane, the storms, or the shoals. It's your own brain. Have you ever bought a specific new car and suddenly you start seeing that exact make and model everywhere you go? The number of those cars on the road didn't change at all. Your brain just started paying attention to them. In psychology, this cognitive bias is called the Baader-Meinhof Effect, or the frequency illusion.
And we can connect this directly back to our explainer's core mystery. Once that 1964 magazine article gave the region a catchy, sinister name, our collective frequency illusion went into overdrive. The world began hyperfixating on any boat or plane lost in this specific patch of ocean. Meanwhile, we completely ignored the hard reality that ships and planes go missing across all the world's oceans in exact similar numbers every single year.
Organizations like the U.S. Coast Guard and NOAA ground this entirely in reality. The Coast Guard doesn't even recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a distinctly hazardous area. They point out that this region sees a massive, staggering volume of daily maritime and air traffic. When you push that many ships and planes through a zone plagued by extreme storms and shallow reefs, a certain number of wrecks isn't a paranormal mystery, it's just a tragic statistical inevitability.
Section 4. The Final Verdict: Myth versus Reality. So when we pull all this evidence together, what's left of the legend? A brilliant investigative researcher named Larry Cush decided to find out. He dug through historical records and uncovered something shocking. Once the triangle gained pop culture fame, mystery mongers literally began fabricating stories to sell books. Remember that terrifying cinematic story of the Ellen Austin ghost ship? Cush found almost zero historical proof it ever happened the way it's told. It was nothing more than an urban legend, passed down and wildly exaggerated over generations. And here is the ultimate, undeniable truth, right in the hard data. The myth claims this triangle is the most dangerous, deadly stretch of water on Earth. But in 2013, the World Wildlife Fund conducted a massive, definitive study ranking the top 10 most dangerous bodies of water for global shipping. The Bermuda Triangle didn't even make the list. The cold, hard numbers prove that the disappearances have absolutely nothing to do with the imaginary borders of a cursed triangle.
The Bermuda Triangle isn't a gateway to another dimension or a monster's feeding ground. It's a fascinating, deadly collision of severe weather, treacherous geography, and the flawed psychology of the human mind. Which really leaves you wondering, what other mysteries out there do you believe right now simply because your brain is wired to look for them? What other famous urban legends are just a trick of your mind's frequency illusion? Subscribe to Hidden Reality for more incredible true stories and hidden realities from around the world.